Glover Teixeira had weighed in on Alex Pereira, and he was talking about Pereira's size. He said Pereira could have a future at heavyweight. Now, so what, right? So what? Well, no, hold on. That's actually very interesting. You've got to understand the source, right? If Chael came out and said it 3 weeks before a pay-per-view fight, you'd wonder, is Chael working? Is he just hustling? Does he think that's a captivating headline that can grab some attention? You'd wonder. Glover has never done that in the history of his career. Not once. Not one time has Glover Teixeira just come and said something because he thought it was interesting or he thought it would get attention. Glover has transitioned into solely being a coach, right? If you are a coach in MMA and you get a guy to a world title fight, you have more than succeeded at your job. Other coaches will look at you and treat you different. If you get a guy to the fight, if you get a champion, you are now going and you are sharing such incredibly rare air that it almost doesn't even get you a bounce. I mean, that really is the criteria in the echelon as coaches. Did you get a guy to a world title fight? And somebody won't even ask you. They won't even be rude enough to ask you, well, how did it go once you got there? I'm just sharing with you, but this is how it's looked at, right? You know, different industries and how people kind of look at it different. I'm sharing with. Glover's already got a champion. Glover had a world champion before he was even a retired fighter. It is extremely rare. So some footage broke the other day, and I don't think these guys meant for it to be a big deal. See, this is possibly the greatest thing about Glover Teixeira, and it's the thing that drives me crazy the most about him, because I like him. He's interesting. He does interesting things. He's surrounded by interesting people. He is not aware that he's interesting. He's not. Glover Teixeira, I want to put this in perspective for you. 2 days ago, a video surfaces. Glover is training Alex Pereira. They're working on some ground positions. Chuck Liddell is with them, being an onlooker, looking at the positions, and Chuck was interested. He was moving. That's how you know when a guy is paying attention and he cares. When he's moving so he can see from different perspectives. It was great. Nothing else happened. I just told you the entire video. Chuck didn't say anything. They didn't interact. This wasn't a live session. Does it need to be? That sounded interesting, what I just said, didn't it? You got these 3 champions sharing a brain about ideas on an experience in a specific position that they believe they could find themselves in against Israel Adesanya. I mean, it's really interesting stuff. Okay, but Glover doesn't know this, right? He doesn't know that that's interesting. He doesn't know people want to see that. So when he goes and sets this down that Alex should go up to heavyweight, let me put a couple of things in perspective for you. Alex is taller, right? There's a certain height that you have to have. People will always talk about reach, and they will always talk to you about weight. A college recruiter, just by example, somebody whose job it is to know, will always look at height. Always. Particularly in a field of combat. I come from wrestling, for example, but if you're looking at a 197 pound guy, and you're going to recruit him, he might weigh 208. You think you pull him down? He might weigh 185. You're not looking at that number when you offer him a scholarship or when you try to project and place him in your lineup. You're looking at his height. How tall is he? It's a very big deal. Johnny Hendricks, who's as good of a competitor, as good of a fighter as you've ever seen. Johnny is as good as anyone that's ever got in there. Particularly at being a competitor. Knowing how to go in front of people, knowing how to work harder than you and get his hand raised. Had a shocking experience at 185 pounds. I mean, this was stunning. Johnny Hendricks, from the time he was a 9-year-old boy, never experienced anything athletically like he did at 185. You want to know what the problem was? Height. Kelvin Gastelum got around it, but it was our concern. Our number one concern with him going up to 185 pounds was his height. He got around it. Bo Chan got around it. If you guys remember somebody saying Mike Tyson got around it, but there's not a lot of them. Spud Webb got around it, but there's not a lot of them. And I bring this to you because before we talk about what is Pierre weigh, what's he going to compete at, where's he the champion today, he's 6'4". Just so you understand, okay? Jon Jones is not. I don't know what Jon Jones is, but he's not. Is he 6'3"? He's not 6'4". He's not taller than Pereira. If you guys got better data than I did, don't be a jerk about it. You understand the point that I'm proving. Ciryl Gane is not. Francis Ngannou is not quite that tall. He's not a very big guy. Jon Jones made it very clear to the world that he wanted to weigh 240 pounds before he got in there with those heavyweights. What Jon never told, at least not that I saw, is what he weighed. What he was walking around at, what he started at. Our mind's all 205 because that's where he was competing. Well, he pulled down to 205. Jon walked around about 225. About 225 pounds is what he hung out at. And then built himself to heavyweight. And he had the height. He had the shoulders. He was broad enough. We knew that he could do it. Pereira walks around at 225. So Pierre walks around and weighs the exact same thing when he's not cutting, getting ready for a fight, that Jon Jones did. Jon Jones moved up, Pierre could move up. I only share this for you because that is a match that we have never considered. We have never even discussed Pereira versus Jon Jones. But that is a wildly interesting match, isn't it? It is almost impossible to find a guy that has one dimension that's better than Jon's. It's not just a matter of, well, I'm better on my feet, he's going to have to take me down. We kind of thought that about Francis just because of the power. But just because of the power. There was no one out there that thought Francis had more of a finesse and was more likely to trick you or step in with an elbow or a flying. It was nothing like that. He's got the power. Jon's going to have to respect it. Might even need to get a hold of him and take him down to the ground. We've never thought that about anybody. Nobody is better in any position. There is no fighter that could fight Tyson Fury that I'd bet on. I'd bet on Jon. And I'm sure I would lose my money, by the way. There's no fighter that could take on Gordon Ryan, and I'd bet on him. I'd bet on Jon. I will not bet against him. Not in anything. Cheering against him's different. I will not bet against. That's how good, but you got to understand. He's not as good as Pereira on his feet. That would be one position where we could say, okay. Now, I'm not attempting to get these guys matched up. I'm just attempting the food for thought here. If I was doing this, if I was the author of it, I would have had a reason. Let me give you an example. Pierre wants to go to 205 pounds. Dana does not like when somebody walks away from his belt. That is a sin from his vantage point. I could only surmise, I have no actual information, that behind the scenes when the idea has been floated to move Alex to 205 pounds, it has been met with some level of resistance. Some level of something that would make you understand that is not the wishes of the boss. And if you ever read The Art of the Deal, one thing that is talked about by the author in The Art of the Deal is you go further than what you want. So, I would only suggest for you, if you're having a hard time selling somebody on the idea of 205 pounds, stop. Sell them on the idea of 265 pounds. You sell them on 265, it starts to make 205. Very simple. And I don't know if there's a little bit of horse trading going on here. There's a reason that Glover made that comment. There's a reason. There is a chance that is exactly what he's saying. We are thinking about going 205 and would be a threat. I apologize, heavyweight, and we're a threat. There's a chance. But there's also a chance that he's bringing you something a little bit more shocking so he can pull it back and get to what he wants, which is Pierre at 205 pounds. I think that's where it's going. I don't think he wants to hang out at 185. And I don't agree with popular opinion there. I don't have any problem with it. When somebody vacates I liked what George St. Pierre did. I liked the opportunity it created. I liked what ended up happening Right when Francis doesn't come back, but now you get two guys. They've got an opportunity to fight over the set. I personally don't see that as a negative. Alex Pereira at heavyweight, 6'4", 225. That's your worst case scenario. Your worst case scenario, he just put on size like Jon Jones, and it doesn't work. Okay, fine. He's still 2.25. Randy Couture was 222, just to put a perspective for you. Night that he won the world championship. Muhammad Ali was 198 pounds when he won the heavyweight championship, and Mike Tyson in his prime weighed 220 on the dot. So, I'm just sharing for you. That's interesting. That's really, really interesting to me. And nobody cuts weight for competition. You cut weight to avoid competition. I know we try to tell the story differently. Nobody cuts to meet a guy to get more respect. If you wanted more respect, you go bigger. That's the way it works. That's the way it's always worked. And we all know that. If you're good enough to win the 205 belt, you should not be at 185. I mean, you're underservicing yourself. You're giving us a view and a perspective. We think the 205 guy is tougher than the 185. We just do. We think if they ran into each other somewhere and it broke off, the 205 guy would beat up the one. That's what we think. And we think the heavyweight could beat them all up. That's what we think. So if you're good enough to grab something and it's at a higher weight and you want perception and history to be on your side, there's very good reason to do it. Now, you've got to get the blessing. You got to get signed off on. Right? A lot of things that happen before you can even enter a division. But when you talk about all the things that have to happen before you can enter a division, I'll tell you, on anyone who has changed divisions, they all started the exact same way as Glover just did, which is making the statement to the audience and waiting to see what your reaction is.